Hello everyone, my name is Adam Smith. I'm the mind behind those vaguely amusing but mostly boring videos on the history of the Liberals and Conservatives' neoliberal agenda the last 50 years in Canada. So every time I talk about neoliberal when it comes to the Liberals or the Conservatives, I am talking about their big business agenda. The policies that they implement, sometimes too much fanfare, oftentimes behind the scenes, that are really about favoring big business and the owners of capital to rake in profits at the expense of everyone else. And I do these videos because I want to wake people up to the reality of the neoliberal agenda and to recognize that whatever little handouts, the Conservatives are always cutting some unpopular tax or fee, like they did with the long gun registry. And the Liberals are always giving little handouts to help this minority group and that minority group. But you have to face it, really look at those things and realize they're a drop in the bucket. The cuts of the Conservatives don't do enough to really help anyone. And the little bits of spending and handouts by the Liberals are always band-aid solutions that don't actually ever solve the problem, and they're not meant to solve the problem. But I digress. I'm here to talk about the election last night and just give you guys some of my thoughts on the election itself, because it was an exciting nail-biter of an election, I have to say, by Canadian standards. And also to give what I think might be the election results might portend for our future here in Canada. So, first of all, it was a nail-biter. Watching those results roll in, the possibility of maybe there'll be a Liberal majority. I think the most exciting thing was, exciting, watching Poilievre lose his seat. But then, of course, on the other side, we have Jagmeet, who lost his seat, an unfortunate loss. And let's face it, the NDP were devastated this election. Because, as always, as exactly what happened in 2015, when the Liberals last had a majority, fear of the cons drove people into the Liberals' arms. There were a lot of people who would have normally voted NDP, but they were so damned afraid of the cons that even in NDP incumbent ridings, they still voted Liberal. Comparing the popular vote to the seat count, the Liberals came in ahead of themselves with 43.7% of the popular vote, but landed a whopping 49.3% of the seats. So almost a false majority. That was the real squeaker. Were the Liberals actually going to cross that threshold? 3 seats shy of getting a majority government, but there you have it. Now, oddly enough, the Conservatives, and again, these things are just a fluke more or less, but the Conservatives almost had exactly the number of seats to match their popular vote. 41.3% of the popular vote for 42% of the seats. The Bloc Québécois also came out almost exactly as they would have been proportional. 6.3% of the popular vote and 6.4% of seats. Although the Bloc, took a hit as well, they lost a whole bunch of seats. No one took a hit harder than the NDP, though. They lost a whole whack of seats. And more importantly, in terms of the voting, they had 6.3% of the popular vote and ended up with only 2% of the seats. Greens, if it weren't for Elizabeth May, we all know they would have been wiped off the map a long time ago. But again, they are underrepresented according to their popular vote. 1.2% of the popular vote, leading to 0.3% of the seats. So it was very interesting. Leading up to it, I kept thinking, oh my God, is it going to be a Liberal majority? Will both? Because for a while it was looking like you were going to need both the Greens and the NDP to hold the balance of power with the Liberals. But now, as it turns out, with the Liberals, gaining as many seats in the last few hours as they did, now the Liberals and the NDP potentially hold the balance of power together. It's doubtful the Liberals would ever team up with the Bloc. And we already know they had, their supply and confidence agreement, which is basically just a coalition, last year, and we got some good concessions out of it. When I say we, I mean Canadians. If it weren't for the NDP and the supply and confidence agreement, we would not have had the beginnings. It's got a long way to go. The beginnings of dental care and the beginnings of pharmacare. Now, the NDP, may not have the number of seats they had before, but that doesn't matter. All that matters is they hold the balance of power. If the Liberals want to, one, stay in government and you know, avoid a confidence vote, and two, be able to enact, you know, their agenda, they're going to have to cooperate with the NDP. And the NDP, even with very low seats, has a lot of power because at a moment's notice, they don't like what's happening. The Conservatives down the government, and I believe the Bloc would too. So, you know, the Liberals kind of are going to be stuck with, you know, working with the NDP, and I hope that's to the benefit of the rest of us. We'll see how long this government lasts. You know, minority governments have a spotty history in Canada, but generally speaking, with the composition of the government here, you know, I think we could be in for a good ride, but it really depends. The voter turnout this election was the other exciting part. Now, of course, it took fear of the cons and anger at the Libs on both sides of the aisle to bring this record turnout. But 68.7%, that is huge. Most of our federal and provincial elections the last decade have been lucky if they hit around 40%, maybe a little north of that. But it's been pathetic, and it's been declining the last 30 years. But to see 68.7% of people come out, that's a good sign that at least people are paying attention. Now, whether or not we'll, you know, learn our lesson and eventually vote in a party who will enact electoral reform and end the false majorities of first past the post, that remains to be seen. It's not on most Canadians' radar, unfortunately. It is literally the most important policy that there possibly could be, because it forever changes how we do politics in this country and will forever ensure a composition of the House of Commons that is more representative of the will of the nation. But, you know, the two powers that be, the cons and the Libs, they know if they wait long enough, eventually they get their majority and they have carte blanche to do as they please. So they will never enact electoral reform. The cons have no interest in it ever, period. And the Libs, you know, made their case clear when they lied through their teeth about it. And so we are left with the option of if we want electoral reform, if we actually want our nation to evolve forward in a positive way and put past the power-hungry distortions of the past, Canada becomes a virtual dictatorship under a majority government. There's very little anyone can do to stop them. And the only way that's going to end is not voting for Liberal or Conservative the next time. Forget about the person, whoever your candidate is, doesn't matter. They're just the face of the party. This is your local face mask. Forget about, you know, the party itself and its other policies and platform and promises. Like, that's irrelevant too. Don't vote for a party. Don't vote for a person. Vote for a policy. Vote for electoral reform. We need to break the cycle, Canada. I implore everyone, you know, the next few years will not be nearly as bad as a Poilievre government, but I will tell you, they, you know, watch the Liberals, watch what they do, watch the things they do give, because they'll be too little, and watch the things they cut, because it will be too much. But they'll do the former as loudly as they can, and they'll do the latter as quietly as they can. They're just sneaky that way. They always have been. They are slick, they're polished, they are of the elite, by the elite, and for the elite, which the cons are too. But the cons' greatest power is finding folksy, good-hearted people to run as local candidates, while the party has, you know, a whole other agenda. So that's my long-winded take on the election and the Liberals and Conservatives. I really hope everyone takes it to heart, and that at some point we can see real change for Canada, because it does not come from the Liberals or Conservatives. I'm not saying it has to come from any particular party. I am nonpartisan. But we need electoral reform, and the options for getting that done are pretty few right now. So you guys do the math. Chin up, Canada. You know, I think we're going to do okay, but we could definitely do better. Cheers, everyone.